Okay, so now that we have identified our mentor text or the one that you're going to use, now the process is that you actually use it in your writing. So we're going to take a look at the raft, which is the one that we did together where everyone did, so that we can have that same experience. And then we'll talk about how to use the rest of them just very, very briefly. So as a writer, I'm looking at this differently. As a reader, I was like, well, that's kind of suspenseful. So as a writer now, my goal is to figure out what did this writer do to create that suspense. And we noticed that we saw the repetition. Remember, we saw the stop. We saw the super short sentences and paragraphs. All of those things can create suspense for your reader. And so your job as a writer is to use the power of your words and this sentence structure and style in order to create the experience for your reader that you want him or her to have. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you how I would use this mentor text in my writing. I want for you to give something a try as well, and then you'll be able to move on to the other pieces. Remember, you can add into a piece that you already have. Maybe you have a piece that has a suspenseful part in it, and now you can go back and try to revise it using one of these strategies. Maybe you want to give yourself some grace right now and leave space, you know what I'm saying? And then go back and just write a moment, like a little quick little snippet of 4 or 5 lines that would go into a text, maybe one day, maybe never. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to think about that repetition in short sentences. You see that she has like 6 or 7 stops. What I suggest as a writer is to do the rule again of 3. If you only do 2 repeated lines, then what happens is your reader's not sure if you did it by accident or if it was intentional. If you do 3 up to 5, after about 5 or maybe 6, if you're really, really good, it starts to get kind of laborious to read or difficult for your reader to understand because you just keep going. So we're going to go with that rule of 3, maybe 4, maybe 5, but that's kind of where I would stop with the repeating. So what I'm going to do is stare at my blank piece of paper, and I'm going to try to think of a situation that may bring on some suspense for me. I'm trying to think, I'm wondering if I can do like where I'm running away from something. And so instead of it just, so I'm wondering, would run be my repeated word? Yeah, let's try that. Let's try run. Here we go. So I'm going to start with, all right, get away, run. And I'm going to put that in the same sentence, but notice this is totally a fragment, but it's intentional, which means on purpose, so it's okay. And then I'm going to start with my repetition of that word. So that's 1. I'm going 3 to 5. Run from the place I've called home. That's not really a very short sentence. Maybe I'll try a different one here. Run away from the chaos. Run until I can't run anymore. Just run. So what I've done is I've tried this idea of the repetition with all these runs. Do I know what my character is running from? Not really. Do I know where my character is going? Not really. But it's okay that I don't know any of those things that are happening. So I'm just writing this scene as if they're running from somewhere, but that's going to just be enough for me. I'll try again with something else. Let's draw a line. Let's see. What else would be a situation where you could use repetition? You know what? I'm wondering if I could do something with sadness, because I also feel like although it's a different type of anxiety, going through a death or something like that, this would also kind of combine, if you read the dog's purpose element, if I take this piece and instead of writing from the dog's perspective of Bailey, if I write from the boy's perspective who's just getting there just in time, I wonder if I can kind of play with the same idea, but a whole other side of the anxiety. This isn't like, this is fear anxiety, but there's also that anxiety of losing someone or something that you love. So maybe I could have, I feel like in a sadness, you often ask why. So maybe like, why him Why today? Why after all these years? Why? And so what I've done here is actually twofold. So I've tried this repetition element of why. I don't even know. I know that in my head I'm thinking of this sadness element, but I don't really even know if that's where this story would go, quite frankly, because it doesn't really matter, because what I'm doing is practicing the repetition and practicing short sentences. But I've also done, not only are they short sentences, but because they're all questions, remember that your brain works like a computer. And what happens is a reader, anytime you ask someone a question, they're going to try to answer it. So if your character is asking these tough questions like you learned about in reading class with the signpost, if your writer is asking tough questions, your protagonist is asking tough questions, your reader is automatically going to be trying to answer these questions. So when you say why him, not only do you have the repetition, the short sentences, but you also have this art of the question, and you are forcing your reader to think about the situation in a different way. So you've kind of gotten a lot of things going on here. So as you're going through, I'm going to breeze through all of these. That was the raft. Again, the repetition, short sentences. If you're trying the prisoner B3087, that idea of like, I know something bad is coming, and so I would have done all these things had I known that was what was ahead of me. Like I didn't realize how bad things could be. House arrest, you have that poetry element. You have the conversation that mom has. You have, again, those short lines. If you did the blood guard, you have the conversation between the mom and the son, or maybe you have one of those suspenseful parts of your story where you just added some of this repetition and stuff, and then all of a sudden you throw in something that seems totally innocuous or unimportant or juxtaposition, like totally unrelated to everything that's happening. You have this scary scene, and then there's a flower that's blooming somewhere. Dog's purpose is that sadness. Again, you could write from the boy's perspective, because this is the person who is dying, and the dog has this sense of peace and calm. And so you could write from the boy's perspective, who's bursting into the room, which tells me that he was running to get there. You have the sports scene that also used that repetition in the short sentences to create that big moment. Again, another place for suspense, okay, or anxiety. Anxiety is something that you feel with strong emotions. Mick Hart was here. This is that lead, that idea that you're not hiding anything from the reader. But if you do this, you have to be super crafty in how you tell your story, because you still have to keep me with you, even though you've already told me where the piece is going. And then Dork Diaries, again, don't discount it just because it's Dork Diaries and it's a female protagonist. She's very good at adding in those elements of sarcasm. Okay, so that's where you can go to put that into your, maybe you do some illusion. We talked about that in the video. If you need something or you have something else that you'd like to see with the mentor text, just let me know and I'll see what I can do. All right, happy writing.